There you go.
Okay, I'll call the meeting of the Air Pollution Control Board to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Board Member Bennett.
Here.
Board Member Brogy. Here. Board Member Foy.
Here.
Board Member Long.
Here.
Board Member Morgan. Board Member Parks.
Here.
Board Member Ramirez.
Here.
Board Member Sharkey. Board Member Zaragoza.
Here.
Chair Pollak.
Here. Okay, and Ms. Brogy, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, item 4 on our agenda is the minutes from our last meeting held on May 9th, and motion would be in order to adopt the minutes as published.
Second. Oh, who did that?
I'll motion.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I'm going to accuse myself.
Cough
was
is
not
not
a motion.
Okay.
I thought I heard it first.
And Supervisor Foy abstains. Item 5 is agenda review, or is there anyone wish to take any items out of order, or are we good as published?
Yes. Chair Pollak?
Yes.
Just to inform you, as I let you know, we do not have all the information in place to proceed with the closed session today, so that'll be continued until June 20th.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Villegas. So that'll make our meeting all the shorter. Okay. So we will proceed with the agenda as published with the exception of the closed session, which is not necessary. Public comments. Do we have any public speakers? Seeing none, I'll move on to board comments. Anybody have any comments they'd like to share? Ms. Ramirez.
Just slightly off topic, but today is the anniversary of D-Day.
Oh.
And something we should all remember. A lot of my father was in World War II, but that generation is pretty much left us. My generation on the way, but it's things that we have to remember, the sacrifice that everybody made to keep our freedom, our democracy, and I like to just remember it and honor the people who made the ultimate sacrifice and those who supported them.
And I second the motion too, because my dad was also a Second World War veteran, and I had lost an uncle in the Korean War. We had a couple of my brother in Vietnam and a couple in Iraq, and Afghanistan, and now my son is in the Navy.
Oh, wow.
His grandson.
We just had our Memorial Day services in Moore Park, and we, over the years, have had 22 residents from Moore Park sacrifice their lives in service of our country. And we remember them twice a year, both on Memorial Day and on Veterans Day. And this year we added an additional aspect to Memorial Day with a Field of Valor, which are basically a planting of flags in remembrance of those that have died for our country. Any other comments? Okay, well, let's move on to our regular agenda. Item number 8 is a public hearing regarding the adoption of the Ventura County Air Pollution Control District's proposed fiscal year 2017-18 budget. Yes. Mr. Villegas.
Chair Pollak, members of the board, good afternoon. I'm Mike Villegas, Air Pollution Control Officer. As your board's aware, the district's budget is made up of two components. One, the operating budget, and the other, our pass-through grant budget. Today I'm going to be focusing on the operating budget because on the pass-through grant budget, which in essence covers our Moyer and school bus programs, revenue and expenditures are always matched, so there's no impact on the district's bottom line. Looking at the total budget, it's nearly $10.7 million, comprised of an operating budget of just over $8.8 million and a pass-through grant budget of just over 1.8 million. When you look at the bottom line, we're projecting a net cost of $456,000, and that's excluding $300,000 for contingency. Once again, the budget has $102,000 earmarked from revenue from fines and penalties, and in the past, that's run substantially higher than that. So you'd be expecting a lower net cost. The other thing to keep in mind is the budget is staff's best conservative estimate of both our revenue and our expenditures. And when you look at the net cost we're projecting, it's almost identical to the net cost we projected last year. Actually, that one without contingency was $426,000. But when you look at actual getting through the year, we're projecting a net savings of $600,000 to close the fiscal year. So as you can see, when we scrutinize expenses, and I realize you have to be conservative looking at revenue. You can't assume that something is going to happen. But it seems over time, the fines and penalties come in. We don't make all the trips we had planned to. And bottom line, we keep our monitoring equipment and our computers. I'm not talking about, just working, and we're conservative with money, and we have good financial performance. The overview is expenditures are going up by $337,000, revenue up by $308,000, and we just have one increment request, and I'll be going over these in detail. First, on the increment, once again, we have $25,000 to pass through to any type of motor vehicle emission reduction project. In the recent years, we've been earmarking the money for electric vehicle infrastructure charging projects. And just to let you know, with the DMV funds that come in, we're allowed to utilize those monies internally for motor vehicle related program costs. So for example, if motor vehicles are half the emissions in this county, which they are, we're paying for half of our monitoring program with the DMV fees. But the bottom line is we're allowed to utilize these funds, the DMV funds, for motor vehicle related programs. But once we've done that, we need to pass the money through, and we do have to pass at least this amount through. On the expenditure side, salaries and employee benefits are up $276,000. This is mostly the effect of the negotiated general salary increases. Services and supplies are up, but the lion's share of that increase is replacement of our desktop PCs, which are currently a little over 5.5 years old, and they'll be 6 years old when we replace them. So like I said, we make things last. As a matter of fact, we didn't replace the monitors last time, so our monitors are coming up on 12 years old. So we're frugal when we spend on services and supplies. And lastly, just a small drop in fixed assets, and this is because we've replaced most of the older monitoring equipment we have, so we're not replacing equipment as often right now. This just a quick pie chart looking at our expenditures. Salaries and employee benefits, that's 73% of the equation there, so that is the major driver. On the revenue side, we're up $308,000. The main thing here is we're getting rental income from the new building at 4567 telephone, and we had the 2.5% fee increase, which was an additional $60,000 of revenue.
Okay, Mike, you hang on a second. Mr. Ramirez, do you have a question?
Yeah, can you, going back to the previous slide with the salaries and benefits, and it's all together, salaries and benefits, 73.49%. Can you break up percentage for benefits?
I can.
More or less?
Can we? I think I might be able to. Oh, man.
I'm just trying to compare notes for various agencies in my own city.
I think you're part of the county's benefit program, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was just asking if Mrs. Ramirez would get the information later,
Sure.
if that's okay, so that in case you don't have the right information
Yeah.
right now, you could follow up with her.
It does?
Yeah,
It follows the county.
Follows the
it's about a
county,
third of it,
which
isn't
is
it?
generally,
It looks like about a third for benefits and everything. When you look at, gosh, everything. Well, overtime we'd have to slice, but
okay.
yeah, when you look at pension costs, Medicare, Social Security, workers' comp, state unemployment, yeah,
Okay.
it's about a third.
Thank you.
As I said, this was mostly the increase in revenue comes from the rental income and the modest fee increase we enacted. Looking at our operating revenue, this is the big three. About $3 million from the DMV fees, which is earmarked for motor vehicle projects. $3 million from permit revenue, which is our core work on stationary sources. And that's supplemented by $1.1 million from the federal grants. And I'm going to get into detail on the other components are pretty small, but I'm going to talk about subvention, state subvention in the next few slides. The big picture is we're still an effective agency. We're getting our inspections done and we're handling timely permitting, even though we have reduced staffing significantly. When you look at the stationary,
Just before you get past that first one, and reduced staffing, when you look at your reduced staff, and you've done this over the years, you kind of just, but is the workload is kind of trickling down too, as you've got people to a certain level, there's not as much of that workload, right?
that's exactly true because we've reduced a lot of staff, let's say in rule development, because we've written the rules to implement the control measures that were technically and cost effective for the county. And now when we make rule changes, they're kind of minor in nature. We're not working with the brand, we're not working for the first time with the oil and gas industry where you get a lot of pushback. It's more minor tweaks to the rules. We will have an effort on the composting operations to deal with that, but
Right.
yes, the work is stepping down. And when you look at what the new EPA is saying, they may reconsider the 70 part per billion ozone standard that was adopted
Right.
last year. So it could be a while before we write our next air quality management plans.
Right, and I noticed because we had a presentation today, you've done a tremendous job in getting our air quality really, really low, and it's great. I mean, it sounds like you said, I think one time here before last year, unless we take the vehicles off the road, it's pretty hard to get much of a change, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought up vehicles because the state is now projecting that the total statewide emissions from motor vehicles will be surpassed because they keep getting cleaner by what they call small off-road engines, which is lawn and garden and things like that. It just gives you a perspective of how clean cars have become over time.
Yeah, yeah, and I think when these batteries change, you may see different lawnmowers, all those other kind of things being changed. But anyway, I guess going back to that, so you're continuing to probably see your staff reduce as people retire out and do those kind of things, right?
Exactly.
Over the time, because it sounds like that's going to be less and less requirements on you.
Yes, but we'll have to see what happens with the ozone standard, et cetera. So basically, when you look at the stationary source funding, we're not quite balanced there with the permit fees and the federal grant, so we've had some very modest adjustments to the permit fees. On the motor vehicle side, as I said, the DMV fees are stable. They're covering all the motor vehicle program costs, and we're looking at very modest increases in the future.
Did you end up more vehicle with this change that the governor's doing starting November? Did you get more of those increased fees? Did it come your way or not?
Actually, that's not for us, but I'll talk on some bills that are coming that could substantially change our funding. The big kind of the elephant in the room is the Trump administration has proposed a significant cut to the federal grants to air agencies. That would be quite a blow to us. But to let you know, we've already got a plan in place to deal with it. We currently have a vacant supervising air quality engineer. We have a vacant air quality specialist and a vacancy with our public information officer. And I know we can meet our mandates and not have to fill all of those positions. So if there is a cut, we're going to be okay because basically those positions are funded and included in this budget. Further, if the cut is bigger than expected, we've already come up with a plan where we could reduce staffing and still meet our mandates.
Mr. Zaragoza?
So how many dollars are we talking about, or do we know yet?
If it was a 30% cut, it'd be $300,000.
30%,
Yes, that's,
that's significant.
yeah. But as we've been reminded, they say what the president proposes and Congress disposes, so we'll see how it all shakes out. Talking to the associations, especially the ones representing the more conservative red states, they're fairly confident that Congress won't be going along with 30%.
Okay.
But they might cut something.
The other thing I want to touch on is state subvention. It's been flat at $200,000 for quite some time, and the state assembly in their budget proposal has proposed to double state subvention to the air districts, which would be an increase of nearly $200,000 for our agency. So that could be a major player. What I'm hearing is they'll probably look at something more along a CPI increase since the last time they looked at subvention, which would bring us somewhere in the $70,000 to $80,000 range in additional revenue. And we're setting money aside for the building renovation at $3.5 million. And the other thing is with the Carl Moyer program, the school bus program, and the alternative fuels work we're doing with Santa Barbara and San Luis District, we are using administrative funds to cover our costs for those programs. The other big one is that there's a bill, AB 1274, and it's moving quite well through the state legislature. It would potentially double the size of the Carl Moyer program. And the proposal is to basically exempt new vehicles from smog check in years 7 and 8. And ARB did an analysis, and it looks like there's a small amount of foregone emissions, but if you use that money towards Carl Moyer, you get a large emission reduction. So that bill may happen. If that does come to fruition and is signed into law, we would probably have to add at least a half full-time equivalent, but we would probably receive administrative funds to cover as large as a full-time position. So it won't impact us on the fiscal side. The other thing is we had a meeting with the governor's office. There's definitely an effort on his part to get ARB's the state greenhouse gas cap and trade program reauthorized. There's been a lot of concern, I believe it's unfounded, from the environmental justice community that allowing facilities to trade greenhouse gas credit is causing impacts with criteria and toxic emissions, which we think we have a good handle on. But it looks like we'll be getting some new mandates, but the governor basically has said, if you get any new mandates, we're going to give you the revenue to handle them from the greenhouse gas reduction fund, which is very well funded in California. So, looking at the fund balance, as always, we have money set aside for fixed asset litigation and motor vehicle projects. We also have $756,000 set aside for the projected net cost, which is based on a very conservative budget. And just like last year, where we had $726,000 set aside, which we didn't touch, and we ended up with a $600,000 net savings, I think we're going to be okay. I don't think we're certainly going to touch the entire amount of that 756. And then we have the $3.5 million set aside for building renovation. That leaves us with $4.5 million in unassigned fund balance, which is just above the upper 6 months of operating reserve.
Mike, Ms. Ramirez has a question on that.
Yes, thank you. Can I ask you about the litigation? I don't remember any litigation.
We don't have
recently.
any
We don't have any,
anticipated
so
at
it's
this
just
time,
a contingency.
It is, yes.
I see we have Mr. Barnes here from County Council. Is that part of administrative costs that we pay County Council?
When we pay for county council, we pay on an hourly basis. That will
Okay.
come out of the budget,
No, it's not a
not
litigation.
from the fund balance. No.
All right. Thank you.
And lastly, this is our projection, looking at the fund balance, and the two lines there are the targeted fund balance, both the lower at 4 months and the upper at 6 months. And you can see out 2021, we look like we're going to stay above that target, which is good for the district. We did not project a cut to the federal grant because we just don't know what that could be yet. Of course, we didn't project any increases from subvention or the greenhouse gas reduction fund either. The only thing we've got in there is just 2% fee increases, which is really modest. So I think we're in pretty good shape for another fiscal year, at least for the foreseeable future. And as you can see in the last item before your board today, we're working everything we can to secure the federal grant. I'll be happy to take questions.
Any further questions?
Yeah, I just had one, going back to something you said early on with regard to the DMV funds to support electric vehicle installations and whatnot. Where are those going in at? And bottom line is, how does cities get involved in?
We have reached out to the city of Fillmore several times, and we will again.
Okay.
Our engineer has always contacted them. They actually had a couple level 2 chargers right near City Hall. I believe they're not operational anymore, and we're more than willing to help you get some new chargers in there. Matter of fact, we've heard from some vehicle owners that that would be a great location, Fillmore. Because currently there's some at the Todd Road Jail that are operational, but not too many people just pull off there to.
Well, and there also will be a couple at the solar, new
okay.
solar location as well. There's supposed to be 2 chargers.
I did not know that.
And if, what we've put in around the county and the different things, do we monitor how often they're used and how much do we have a way to know if that's really a good
I think we
location?
could work with GSA on the counties, and we could talk to the cities and the school districts. But like, for example, Oak Park, they continually say that they need a couple more just about every year because they're being utilized very well there.
Okay.
City of Ventura, I can tell you at the downtown parking garage, it's pretty busy. And then our building, it's pretty busy also.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to put them in, you want to, where there's really used, not just
Exactly.
say we did it here and it's never used, so, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, well, this is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing. Do we have any public speaker cards? No speakers? Okay, I'll close the public hearing, and a motion would be in order to adopt the budget.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, the budget is adopted. We're on to item 9, which is to receive and file comprehensive audit for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2016. Mr. Villegas.
Yes, our external auditor, Vavrnik, Trying Day and Company, completed their comprehensive audit of the district for the fiscal year ending June 30th of last year. It resulted in 2 reports. First, the comprehensive annual financial report and the single audit report. We're required to have an annual single audit report pursuant to federal regulations since we do receive a federal grant via the US EPA. The audit did not find any material weakness in our financial systems, and I'm very pleased with the report. I'd like to thank Nancy Mendoza and Leonie Macaray, who handle our fiscal issues and keep things in excellent condition. That's all I have. I'll be happy to take questions.
Any questions? Yes, Mr. Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Villegas. All looks pretty good. There was a comment from the auditor in the management letter about recommendation to strengthen the year-end closing procedures over annual emission renewal fees, and of course, management agrees with that. Can you just give us a little?
Yeah, what happened there
extra?
was, we bill our permittees on a quarterly basis, and what happens in the last quarter, which would be starting April 1, we send out renewal notices, and if we're ever late sending that out, and someone like NRG, who happens to be in the last quarter, pays their bill after June 30th, that creates an issue for the auditor. So what we've done is we've made sure that we're getting our billing statements out right at the start of the quarter for that last quarter, and that's in place already. But that was the issue. And then, of course, no matter how good we do, somebody is going to pay late in that group. So
And
you're just hoping it's not a large facility.
can I ask a question? Is there a follow-up penalty because of that?
No.
You know, if you, if
Oh, from our, yes, there is.
yeah, because, you know, that doesn't help the auditing, if they don't pay on time.
Exactly, and yes, we do assess late charges.
Oh, okay,
Okay, good.
good point.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, motion would be in order to receive and file. I have a motion and a second by Mr. Bennett. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay. We'll move on to item number 10, receive and file correspondence from the Air Pollution Control Officer to, from our Air Pollution Control Officer to Scott Pruitt, Administrator of the U.S. EPA regarding Federal Clean Air Act grants.
That's just for your information. We're working with our other agencies throughout the country to let them know that in order to implement these mandated programs, we need adequate funding. And if the federal grant gets smaller, it just puts more of the burden on the stationary sources in our county, and that's not something I believe anyone wants to have happen. So.
Understood? All right. If there's no questions, a motion to receive and file would be in order. A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. As opposed? Okay, and that brings us to the end of our agenda, and we are adjourned until the 20th.
We have our attorney here.
Oh, yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to raise a point of clarification on the budget item, number 8. I believe the motion was to adopt the budget, but this was actually just the first reading, and so it's going to come back to your board on June 20th.
Oh,
And so
okay.
it's basically a receive and file.
Pretty good.
And so I just wanted the record to reflect that. So if anyone wants to show up on the 20th and comment on the budget, they'll have the opportunity to
This
do
was
so.
the
Yes,
first
thank you
two.
for catching that. Are there any objections to
No.
that characterization? Okay,
So we're having a special meeting on the 20th, right?
correct.
Just to deal with budget? Okay, but it's a special meeting.
Well, yes, we'll probably have a closed session then also.
Yes, every June we have to go through this. There's state law that requires that air districts with a budget over $1 million conduct 2 hearings, 14 days apart.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we're adjourned until, oh, yes. I was going to adjourn us. We're adjourned.
Figuring our meeting after.
I don't believe.